almost seems like yesterday. The time had come to learn to be more independent, more wary of oneself and one's future. It was time for college. Coming to Holy Cross was a blind move, almost like going to a blind date ball. College was to help a person secure a more promising future. But really, what was I getting myself into? What was college about? Who was I as a person? What did I want out of life? Did I really want it? Suppose I did not achieve my goals. What if? Questions have haunted our 4 years, either in the classroom or in our heads. And even when my philosophy of life and the path to my future seemed so crystal clear, I would change my mind yet again. After 4 years of such questions, the way should seem clearer. But is it? Who am I? Who are we? We are the class of '88, children of the baby boomers. We bubble with dynamic energy and talent which awaits to be let loose on the world. Holy Cross can no longer contain us as we burst at its seams, waiting for the right moment, a moment that is almost here. We are thankful to our parents' generation for making our life at Holy Cross, as well as in the world, easier. No longer do we trek in the damp and cold to church every morning at 7 a.m. No longer do we sit on cold, tough wooden benches in Kimber. No longer do we wear jacket and tie or cut our hair short. No longer do we have 6 courses and lights out at 10 p.m. No longer do we say he when we speak of the Holy Cross student who now comes in female as well as male varieties. Yes, we have a lot to be thankful for. But even though much had changed at Holy Cross before we got here, sometimes our tendency to think too quickly in stereotypes had not. I received my roommate's name and address late in the summer of '84. Quinn, said my father. That's an Irish name. I had signed up for a non-smoking roommate, so my dad said, must be a job. And I agreed. Little did I know that most Holy Cross students don't smoke cigarettes, and not all people with an Irish name like Quinn are jocks. As for my roommate, he figured on living with a black Jamaican with his hair in dreadlocks who smoked weed all the time. You should have seen his face and his parents when he opened the door. As our stereotypes crumble, we entered into the realm of the getting to know you period. What's your name? Where are you from? What's your major? Everybody then seems so different. In a way, strange. Now we seem so similar, like we have melted and been molded together for 4 years. I used to have trouble understanding what people from down south or from New York had to say. Then, there was my accent to contend with. Now we seem so easily to understand each other. The very fact I speak for you is both funny and touching. We have learned so much about our differences too. When 4 years ago, a fellow student asked, Joe, what kind of transport do you have in Jamaica? What could I say? Well, we have horses and buggies, and at the intersection a cop holds up a green apple for go, a red for stop, and an orange for proceed with caution. What's worse is he fell for it. Americans seem so ignorant. Of course, I eventually realized that Vermont was a state, not a ski lodge. I guess ignorance is a part of the human condition. Over the years, some of the ignorance evaporated as we asked questions concerning blacks and whites, males and females, wealth and poverty. I remember one hallmate asked, how many students in my high school class were black? That caught me by surprise. I had to stop and think. I'd never taken notice of color before, and it turned out, to my surprise, that out of a class of about 40, only about 2 or 3 were white. It was something I'd never taken notice of before. A friend tells me I was naive. I guess I was, but I wish for us a world in which color makes no difference. Our world is far from being free of racism. The South African problem rings loudly in our air. The beatings are daily, the injustice is sickening, and oppressed people cry out for freedom. So what are we going to do? Do we support economic sanctions? Do we buy products from companies which have subsidiaries in South Africa? Do we join demonstrations? Are we going to stand back and have someone else solve the problem? Or are we going to get involved ourselves? And will we be brave enough to confront the less obvious racism we face in our daily lives? Our lives at Holy Cross should have helped us prepare for what may be an even trickier issue of justice. How are we to respond to each other as men and women? In my first year here, I found it so strange to have one professor stop and correct himself when giving an example. The correction, I'm sorry, I meant to say chairperson instead of chairman. I understood why. My head had been chopped off the night before when I joked about a woman's place. You bet I learned fast. But the more I lived with the notion of women as equals, the more it seemed a good and necessary equation. And those few who still do not accept that essential equality, whether male or female, are in for a big surprise, especially with 75% of this year's economics accounting class consisting of women. But as we, male and female, pursue equal pay for equal work, what will we, male and female, do about poverty and our attitudes towards wealth? Remember being asked, what does your dad do? And does your mom work? The true indicator of some people's value systems came with the question, what kind of car does your dad drive? Does it matter? Does it change who I am? If we lose our BMWs, our standard of living, or our computers, surely we will still have our ideas and our self-esteem. Change cannot take these away from us, but change is inevitable. The US economy is faltering. It is saddled with both domestic and international debt. Its consumers save little and prefer to utilize MasterCard's 30-day credit. The US's South American debtors, such as Brazil and Mexico, cannot pay back even the interest on their loans. We are even looking at another oil crisis in 1990. We have been living on extended credit too long. How do we respond to a reduction in privilege? Will we share our reduced wealth? Will we be crushed? Or will we be ready to persevere and conquer as we, the class of '88, meet the new century at the height of our social and economic power? We are ready. The Holy Cross Rail World Flight Simulation has given us a chance to prove and test ourselves. And prove and test ourselves we did. Members of our class ran student government as mere sophomores and juniors. One classmate made sure the Crusader paid for itself. The first time in about 10 years. We even had an editor-in-chief at the sophomore level. We founded Economics Journal and Organization. We instituted the Oxford Holy Cross debates and began a tournament which brings together debaters from over 400 high schools. Both have become annual events, as have the off-campus Parents' Weekend Ball and the limousine race. Yet others are about to move on to the nation's top grad, med, and law schools. Others risked their lives to venture to such lands as Peru and South Africa to conduct first-hand interviews for the reason of an honors thesis. Then there were others making their marks in sports. A woman led our tennis team to victory, and another member of our class almost won the Heisman. He and his teammates did become the #1 1AA team in the nation, breaking almost every record there is to break. And if our class chair's current plans materialize, we will be the first to have a class reunion outside of the United States, on a small island in the sun. A place called Jamaica. Of course, we were also the class with the highest percentage of students making the move to off-campus housing. Dean of Students' Office and the local police may think we did so simply to drink. But many of us really did want to find out if we could survive on our own, and most of us did. Sadly, we are also the class that has too often had to mourn the deaths of classmates. They would, I think, approve of our class gift, the first ever to be given before graduation, a tree that will grow in the Stein courtyard, even as we continue to grow. Where do we go from here? Into the world, the rest of the world, as educated men and women. Edward Bulwer Lytton, most famous for having written the line, "It was a dark and stormy night," was also an early advocate of universal education. Last year I read words of his which summed up what I too believe. He said, "Where intelligence is equalized and flows harmonious and harmonizing throughout all society, then one man, and I would add one woman, can possess no bleeding and dangerous power over the minds of another. We must now use instead the power of our minds and our talents to harmonize, not tyrannize. We are ready, at least, to try. And we thank you all, parents, professors, friends, for having helped to shape us, your future. As we say back home in Jamaica, cool man.